guys. I don't think anybody's here yet. But hi. I have to wait for people to show up. God, I just realized this is going to be an entire video of me vamping by myself. We can do this. But hi to everyone who is watching. I think there's 5 people thus far. Good morning, you 5 people. Welcome. I have my actual mic this time, so I should sound a little less like ass. If I sound weird or there's any problems, please let me know. Oh, there's only 3 people now. We're dropping them like flies, guys. Vamping with Maria in the morning because we needed a live stream this week. Oh, my phone just told me, watch Unresolved Textual Tension, catch up with Maria. Hello, John. Welcome to the stream. How are you doing this morning? Oh, we have 12 people. Okay, I feel a little less embarrassed. There was 3 for a while. It was very embarrassing. But as the title said, and the description, if anyone has read it, this is a live stream with just me. If you've ever watched our show and thought, you know, I love it, but I'm just here for Maria, well, congratulations. I don't know why you would necessarily want that, but you got it. Congratulations. It's here. Hello, Gabriella, Alan Paz. Thank you, Maria Time. I'm pretty excited. Hello, William. Boo to you as well. Where's Will? He's there. He's in the comments harassing me right now because he's a hobo. See? William says, "Boo. Where's Will? He's rugged and handsome." Well, yes, we know that. And so masculine. Thanks, Will. We love a good self-brag. Good morning, Amber Backwell says, good morning, Maria. Long-time watcher, first-time live stream catcher. Yay! I don't know if this is the best live stream to catch as your first one, because it's literally just gonna be me talking about stuff, answering questions, discussing the books I read on my hiatus, but, like, this is it. So, like, if you wanted more than just this, I apologize, but, you know, I'm glad you're here. Please. Oh, Will also wants to mention, and single. So, you know, any of the ladies out there want to apply. Q. Is that a 2 L's that are different things? Huel MP. Good morning, and thank you for welcoming back. I am. Del Lucetti says, I've been waiting for so long to know what you thought of the rest of the Raven cycle. I'll actually talk about that as well. There's a couple of sequels I've read that I haven't talked about on the channel because we didn't read them. But I am happy to discuss the rest of the Raven cycle as well. It's been a minute since I read it, but I absolutely, I think, can give some opinion. And, oh, Amber Blackwell says, Nat, don't tell Will and Katie, but you're my favorite. Thank you. You have impeccable taste. As do I. As we all know, my opinions on the podcast are the actual correct opinions. Don't listen to William. It's me. I lied. It's definitely not me. I've had some rough takes in the past, but I'd like to think I'm pretty I don't want to say I'm the people's Unresolved Textual Tension podcaster, but I think that's Katie. I think Katie is the people's Unresolved Textual Tension podcaster. I think she's the. Oh, look. Someone with a lot of guff says that's all lies. Wow. What guff? Someone else with a lot of guff says elitist. I cannot believe these people who could just as easily pop into this live stream but are just, you know, gonna harass me in the comments, I guess. Jerks. Okay, we have about 31 people. So I'm just gonna, I suspect most of you saw the video where I explained where I was for my hiatus, but I'll go into it a little bit here. We'll also do a little bit of question answering. If you've ever had any burning questions that you wanted to ask me. And then we will talk about the books I read while I was on my hiatus. And I will kind of tell you what I thought about them, solo style. So yeah, just recap. Obviously, I have been missing out of quite a few videos. I want to say in about the past 2 months. And it was a combination of things. I ended up traveling like 2 weekends in a row before things got really crazy in September. And then, hurricanes hit late September, early October, and that let me tell you, I do not recommend getting your home flooded. If you've ever thought to yourself, I'd like to have to move, throw out tons of my stuff that I love, move but not have any of the joy of getting to move to a new place that you're excited about, throw away a ton of the things that you care about a lot, and then, struggle to find a place to live in like a 48-hour period. That's what getting your home flooded is like. I would not recommend it. If anyone has questions about what that process was like, I'll answer them. But it was not a fun process. It was a very rough month. October was not a good month, which sucks because it's my birthday month. Like, October did me dirty this year. But yeah, so it was not fun. Katie also got some damage to her home and some of her stuff with the second hurricane that came through. So it was just like not good time. Let me tell you, if you've ever looked at Florida and been like, "Ooh, I'd like to move there," can I recommend not? Like, don't do that. That's my advice. Just recommend. Shannon Rosas says, "Good evening from my side of the world. I'm from the Philippines." Hello to the Philippines. It is indeed evening. It is morning for me. I've got my morning cup of tea. I finally went back to the condo that flooded and got my actual mugs before we packed them all into a storage unit. So I actually have a mug that brings me joy today. Good morning, Rachel the Radiant, a regular commenter and person in our live stream. So hello to you. And Periwinkle Blue, hello. But yeah, so it was just a really rough time. If you ever have to evacuate because you think they're like, if you're told to evacuate because it might flood, even if you think it won't flood, please just pick up your stuff off the floor. There were so many things because we were like, no way it's going to flood. Why would that happen? That we just left on the floor like doofuses. All of my Punky's cute toys that she brings to me as gifts, gone, except for the few I took while we evacuated. Electronics like power cords that power cords live on the floor. That's what you do, like extension cords. They're just on the floor. Don't do that. That's dumb. Laundry. I had like a sweater just on the floor. Garbage. I had to throw it away. If you have a laundry basket that's made out of fabric, put it on your bed. Don't do what I did. I lost a lot of clothing. I also lost books, which is, I suppose, one of the greatest crimes on the planet. I lost quite a few very old, very special to me books, including stuff since I was in third grade, stuff from my textbooks from my master's program that I had like written in the margins. So not great. If you get told to evacuate somewhere, please pick your stuff up off the floor. Don't be like me. Don't be overconfident. We were like, it hasn't flooded in forever. We're fine. Don't do that. It's not, would not recommend. Okay, we're up to 34 people. Super exciting. But yeah, another reason I was gone was I had, my job had a conference or a convention thing in Denver, Colorado. So I got to go to Denver for the first time. Fiction with Friends so says, "Are you in the Carolinas?" No, Florida. The U.S.'s armpit. No, listen, I've lived in Florida my whole life. We get a lot of flack for the most part. Florida's fine, but god damn it, hurricanes. But yeah, I got to go to Denver for the first time, which was beautiful. I like mountains and cool places. Uh, Rhymes with Pineapple sent $1.99 and said, "Buy something nice for yourself. Thanks." That's Katie, by the way. She's you know, she's got gumption and guff. But yeah, so Denver was fun, and then I actually went to the Carolinas. I visited Greenville, South Carolina, which was really cool and very pretty. And went away for a belated birthday trip. Yeah, and that kind of carries us to here. I am now back. We mentioned in the last video, I'm currently living at a friend's parents' house, which also got mentioned. He's an ex, but like, we're really cool friends. Like, ooh, Amber Blackwell, is Greenville, Carolina close to you? I loved it. I had a great time. The Carolinas are gorgeous. Asheville is mwah. Currently not so great, but beautiful. Gorgeous place. And also, Rachel the Radiant, I'm glad your uncle was not flooded. It is not fun. But yeah, so we are trying to make space for ourselves here because my friend's parents, Tina and Pete, they are lovely. They were great and let us stay here, but they had not been expecting people to stay here, so we've been trying to make space for ourselves. This gorgeous bookshelf filled with books that are a mess that feels very Maria, are actually my friend's. He is not obviously a big reader, and you can't see the bookshelf goes all the way that way. And he has a lot of stuff, but he has a doctorate in philosophy, so like a lot of that is like philosophy textbooks. If you look up there, those are, I think, graphic novels of different philosophers. Yeah, he has a lot of cool stuff. There's also, if you see that little shark, I helped him paint that. We did that at one of those paint places where you paint pottery. Uh, okay, Will would like me to tell you about the asparagus. So I will do so because so Will made a grave mistake that has resulted in many terrible things happening to the world. In fact, Will has directly linked this incident with the state of our country and the election, because it happened literally the Sunday before the election. This guy had the guff. And what that was is Will doesn't eat a ton of stuff. Like, there's a lot of stuff he doesn't like. And despite being a vegetarian, there's a lot of veggies that, he ain't down to hang with. Weirdly, he loves mushrooms and some other things that are real weird for picky eaters, but, whatever. But the Sunday night, he ate asparagus. Roasted asparagus that he did himself. Those of you who just exist on the internet don't know this, but Will is not a big, like, he doesn't cook a ton. So, number one, I was super proud of him for just, like, trying it, roasting asparagus. He was like, it was actually pretty good. I need to tweak the recipe. And then the world went to shit, and he was like, this is because of the asparagus. And he's also he's decided that retroactively the asparagus has affected, like, time is flat circle, so him eating the asparagus also is part of the reason that all this other stuff happened. I don't know if I believe this theory, but it is the theory that Will holds. So, if you choose to believe it, shame Will for eating asparagus. Maybe on a couple random videos, just go comment, Will should never have eaten the asparagus, and just leave that there. And people who didn't see this live stream will be very confused. And then, like, we have, like, an in-group thing now, guys. We have the story of Will's asparagus. Also, Rachel the Radiant, I agree. The world will be fine. Eat the asparagus. Asparagus is delicious. Please eat it. As Katie said, Will eats bread. A lot of bread. In fact, his favoritist thing is Einstein's Brothers bagels. He loves them. You've never seen someone so happily eat Einstein's bagels. He's a man of simple taste. He really is. Uh, Gabriella Allen Paz says, "Y'all, what's the opposite of asparagus?" uh, let's figure out what it is, and we'll make Will eat it. Whatever the opposite of, would it be like those breadsticks, those like sticky bread guys with sesame seeds on them? What are those that you would get at like some restaurants where they're like just, but there's cracker like they snap, but they're breadsticks. You get served them sometimes with the sesame seeds. Maybe that's the opposite of an asparagus. Or should we go like completely different, like shape as well? Like what is fundamentally different in shape? No, where did you take me? Um, uh, Tariq Hanath says asparagus is really good, but the awful smell that come when you use the toilet can't bear that. That's fair. Da da da. Will says time is like a sheet, and the asparagus rippled both forward and back in time. Oh, I'm done. Let me tell you, being Will's friend is just a series of laughing at your phone. Like you get a message, you look at it, and then you're like, "Did he actually send that?" And then you laugh, and it's a good time. I can highly recommend it. Katie, not biscotti. They're specifically uh those what is it called? They're like little thin sticky guys that they're savory. They've got sesame seeds on them. Sometimes they, I don't know. But yeah, they're not biscotti, but potentially the opposite of asparagus. Um, but yeah, fun library. I'm actually now in the office instead of being in the dining room. So instead of the yellow, we have this nice like seafoam green color. Very, I don't know if it's doing anything for my natural skin tone. We also have, peep right there, that's a litter box. This is the room we keep the litter box in. So Data was in here earlier just fucking around because he was like, why are you here? Why? Yeah, because we actually had to clear this space out so that I could record in here so that my poor boyfriend didn't have to get like relegated to his room so that he doesn't get, we don't hear him around. So that's good. Okay, so if anyone has any questions about the podcast, about what I've been up to since, we can do a couple of questions, Q&As. You can ask me questions about Katie, Will. I'll answer them 100% honestly. And by that I mean I will give the most absurd answers I possibly can to whatever questions you ask about the two of them. Let's ruin some reputations, guys. Except for mine. It's the best over here. And then we'll go into talking about the books. I'm also really interested to see if any of you have read some of the ones that I read recently, because I'm very, very excited to actually talk about them with someone. So I hope some of you have read it. That would be really exciting. Will posted what the list was on YouTube in the community, in a community post. It was one that I read ages, like when I was very young, and this was the first time I reread it as an adult, Enchanted, which a lot of people in the comments to the community post commented on and enjoyed it, which is super exciting. I have a lot of thoughts about it now that I read it as an adult, so I'm excited to talk about that one. Ooh, Olivia Velasquez says, if the three of y'all were stuck on an island, what survival skills would you each have? Will would be able to build shelter. He would be able to like take some trees and probably like the inner part of like a palm leaf, palm frond, and assemble shelter. That would be his job. I think Katie would make the gatherer. Oh, so Eugene Bespalco asks, "Oh, what this?" This is a live stream of just Maria. Currently we're doing some funny question and answer, but eventually I'm going to talk about some of the books I read while I was on my hiatus. Will says, I hate that you're right about that, because that's exactly what he'd do. He'd be freaking building the shelter, making, like, smoothing out the dirt, like, on the land, the space we're working on so it was level. That's absolutely him. Katie says, I can catch crabs and fish. Okay, I was gonna say you'd be the gatherer. That was gonna be my go-to. You would gather supplies. We would just send you and you could, like, hop over the island. Now, the problem is, if this is a very hot tropical island, Katie can only work in the beginning of the day before it gets too warm, and at the end of the day before it gets too warm. During the middle part where it's really hot and sunny, we have to hide her underneath the shelter Will has built. Because Katie, I don't know if you guys know this, but she's pale as all get out. And she handles direct sunlight straight into her face for an hour plus very badly. One time, while yes, Black Mage says, like, maximum white. And one time when we went to, so Katie and I did study abroad in Japan. We did about 6 weeks together before I stayed there for about 5 more months. But during the 6 weeks we were there together, we went to Tokyo. Terrible idea if you have no money. And as broke college students, we had zero monies. But we were just, like, walking around doing things. Katie got heat stroke. I was warm and, like, sweaty, but I was fine. Katie literally, like, we had to find like, we literally ate at an expensive restaurant in the middle of a park because Katie had to get out of the sun and get into some air conditioning. So, yes, Katie would be our gatherer, but start of day, end of day, the middle of the day, we hide her under stuff so she doesn't, spoil in the sunlight. Me, I'd probably be the person that got stuck cooking everything. Like, Will, you'd have to get used to fish because I'm pretty sure that would be a lot of what we ate. Maybe you could eat some coconut. But I'd be the person that was, like, descaling fish, ripping out the guts, and then cooking it over a fire. I have cooked over open fires many a time. I used to do historical reenactment for the Renaissance, specifically the English Renaissance. So I've done a lot of, like, I can build a spit, I dig a fire pit, build a fire, and cook over it. Not that there would be anything to build a spit for. Like, if we're on a deserted tropical island, it's fish and some crabs. Like, that's, I think, the best we're gonna go. Will says bread. I will only eat bread. There's no bread on the island. Ooh, Laffy Daffy says, who would be eaten by crabs first? Katie. I love Katie, but if someone dies first, it's her. 100%. Out the gate. Number one, Will and I, we have more body fat to sustain us through not eating for long periods of time. We also handle the heat better. Katie did say iguana over a spit, which is freaking hysterical. We could eat iguana. I don't know how much meat is on it. I also don't know how to prepare it, but I'll try my best. Gabriella Allen Paz says, wow, you're more equipped than my friend group. Thank you. Who knew that we would have the exact skills? I think there was a couple of other questions higher up, so I'm going to there. Amber Blackwell says, I have a question. Were you always a big fan of fiction, or are you one of those people who read a specific book that sparked something? If the latter, what was that book? Do you know about the others? So I think I can answer a little bit for the others, but I'll start with myself. So I was not a big reader prior to 3rd grade, and unfortunately, my reading origin story is tied to a very specific book, and, for better or for worse, but we'll get to that. My mother is a huge reader. She has a massive library of books. Ever since she got her e-reader, that lady must have like 30,000 books on it. Like, she just reads a ton, and she always has. And she was very big in trying to get me to read when I was young, but I had no interest in it. And then in 3rd grade, I had a really fantastic teacher, Mrs. Spalter, and she read us a couple of pages, maybe like a chapter a day, of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. and it was really boring at first because my mom had tried to make me read that book as well. Like, she tried reading it aloud to me because she had really loved it. And I had zero interest because anyone who has ever read that book knows that the first chapter is real freaking dry. Uh, oh no. Angry Otter, you're right. Will did not announce the stream in the Discord. I think I was supposed to do that, but I forgot. Will, go announce in the Discord that this is happening. Okay, thanks. Bye. Um, and yeah, the beginning of the first Harry Potter book is very boring. Like, that first chapter, that's not how you get a child in. That's how you get an adult in. I'm pretty sure that first chapter is for the adults that are reading it. But anyway, the teacher read it every day, and eventually, right around the time where it got to the Harry Potter or the Halloween portion, which is the Troll in the Dungeon portion, I was like, this bitch is reading too slowly. So I got the book from my mom at home, and I just read the whole thing and ended up reading the second book before my teacher finished the first book. And then I just like powered through the third one and the fourth one because at the time all four were out. And then from there, I just became voracious. The other thing that also happened in third grade that started me becoming a reader was we lost the privilege to watch TV during the week. My siblings and I would always argue about what we were going to watch because we all wanted to watch other things. I wanted to watch Zoids. That's what I wanted to watch. And then, you know, like Toonami in the afternoon. But Zoids played specifically in the morning. And eventually, we argued all the time enough that my one mom was like, that's it. No TV during the week. You get it on the weekends. And so during the week, I had to find a different way to like entertain myself. And there was the Harry Potter books that I had just read. And I was like, reading is basically like TV, but it happens in your brain. And so I just started like shoving books into me. Like, it was, I read so much that I basically blew through my elementary school's fiction section, like every fantasy, sci-fi, anything I could get my hands on, to the point where my mom was spending too much money at Barnes and Noble, so she started having me read some of her books, which were like adult books, but because they were longer, much smaller font, they took me much longer to get through. Very smart decision on her end. And yeah, since then, just huge, massive reader. And I love it. There's been a couple of questions. Eugene Bespalco says, the real question is the Harry Potter to Twilight pipeline real? I don't know if it is. I found Twilight because friends in middle school were reading it. I didn't naturally come to it myself. I had a bunch of friends who had like started reading it. In middle school, I was reading a ton of manga during the school day, especially like the romance mangas and, you know, a little bit of paranormal romance manga. So I would say for me, it was more of that group of friends who read a lot of romance manga, shoujo, ended up being the pipeline to Twilight. I read the first book. At the time, I was young. I was okay with it. I didn't think it was the greatest thing, but I was okay. I read the second one and I hated it. I hated it. The minute I read it, I hated it. And that very much ended my experience with Twilight. I think I ended up reading the third book at some point, but I've never actually read the one where Bella has a baby. I had no interest. By the time that came out, I was well past the stage. And I was one of those people that had that like big, like, I remember being in my bachelor's being like, Twilight is the end of children's fiction. It's problematic, and like I looked down at it a lot, which is just, let the teen girls enjoy what they want, you know? Just let the teen girls enjoy what they want. I think there's been enough retrospectives on Twilight that kind of fit with how I feel about it now, which is, for the most part, it's fine. Young girls and women, myself, read a ton of stuff that shows things that we don't actually want. Like, it's fine if girls are into Edward. They don't actually want guys who are going to stand in their bedroom and look at them, you know, while they sleep. I think it's fine. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's good, but I think it's fine for girls to like them. Like, I think there's a lot of stuff where, like, the ACOTAR series, I will never begrudge anyone for enjoying that. enjoy it. Get your we all know Mistress Sapphire, my friend Gina. She actually read that series at a really specific point in her life where it paralleled some things she was going to, especially the second book with Tamlin and like Feyre's falling out. And like, yeah, I get why that would click. Do I hate those books and would I burn them if somebody like was like, "Here, you have to read this forever"? I'd be like, "Well, I guess I'm reading nothing." Yes, but I also don't begrudge anyone for liking it. I think it's okay to enjoy stuff like that. I don't think it's. Will says this is why you can't be trusted on your own. William, you can't say shit. Fuck you, buddy. Let me go back. I think some people are making comments previously that I just talked past. Um, Eugene Bespalco says, I feel like Harry Potter, no matter what people think of the author, was a gateway for a lot of people into reading. It really was. It was a cultural phenomenon at the time, and I will never begrudge it that. I think there's a lot of stuff in those books, and I have not read them in the past 15 years. I have not reread the series. And I think there's a lot of things in it that I look back on and I'm like, really? Why do we have to do it that way? But for I think a whole generation of people, it was, massive. And also it for a lot of people, it felt like, this is the place where the odd people like we bond over this thing. You bond over Harry Potter. Now, I will say for me, while it was my gateway book into reading, I was never like I didn't have a robe or a wand. I ended up getting a wand when I was like in my mid 20s because we went to Dragon Con and there was a really pretty one. And it ended up being a Harry Potter wand, but I just wanted a wand, not specifically. So I was never like a huge diehard Harry Potter fan. I really don't like the last three books. I think everything past the Goblet of Fire is kind of trash. I don't like them. I think J.K. Rowling should have been heavily edited. And I've never reread them. I had reread the first four a ton when I was younger, and then like the last, like the fifth book came out, and I was like, I never want to reread that ever. That was rough. Chris M. Hey, I'm late and didn't read any of these except Sherlock Holmes, but I'm here for support. Perfect. We haven't even started talking about any of those books. We're doing some Q&A. I'm excited to see your thoughts on Sherlock Holmes, though. Ba ba ba. Rachel the Radiant says Midnight in the Dollhouse, Indian in the Cupboard, and Neverending Story. Those are some of my first. Now, I read Neverending Story as an adult in college. I took a children's literature course, and I love that story. I would absolutely read that to nieces or nephews I have in the future. Amber Blackwell says, I gotta get back into reading rather than audiobooks. It's been real hard since I went off my ADHD meds. So I actually have read a ton. So as a lot of you know, most of the books I read for this podcast, I do audiobooks. It's just how I've been able to keep up. But most of what I've read outside of the Sherlock Holmes, I read through my e-reader. And so it's the first time in a very long time that I've actually been, reading with the eyes, and I really enjoy it. And I can do both. Like I can have an audiobook that I'm listening to at the same time, like not obviously at the exact same time, but on the same day I can listen to the one, read the other, and it has helped me get through a lot of these, but I've really enjoyed it. But it is very hard to focus on. I audiobooks really like, especially like while you're doing something and you have the audiobook at the same time, that's a perfect combo. Wholesome Bookworm said, can you speak Greek by any chance? No, unfortunately. So most people know I have like my moms are lesbians, but I do have like a dad that I grew up with. My mother and father, who both speak Greek, just decided not to teach their children Greek. I have tried learning Greek. Whenever I go to Greece to visit friends and family, I like study and will try just enough so that the Greek people in Greece don't look at me with dirty looks. Because let me tell you, if you have a very obviously Greek name and this face and you go to Greece and you cannot even say I can't speak Greek or thank you or anything, ooh, the dirty looks. It's rough out there. It's my first experience as an adult going to Greece was I passed my passport. He saw my name and saw my face and just starts talking to me in Greek. And I was like, and then he was just like, welcome to Greece. And I was like, yikes. So I wish that was different. I give my mother guff about it all the time because it would have been so easy to learn as a child. Do you consider reviewing other AuthorTube books? We thought about it. We didn't want to get pigeonholed because for a while there we did quite a few AuthorTubes. We did Keeper by that one lady whose name I'm forgetting. We did Cyborg Tinkerer, and obviously, you know, General Morassi was our bread and butter for a minute there. And I think there's another AuthorTuber that we've talked about, but it hasn't come up recently. I think we really wanted to get not pigeonhole ourselves specifically to that, but I would be interested in doing it again. It always feels like I feel a little rough like inside when we review them, especially when we don't like them and I'm like, oh, this person has a platform. That sucks. Black Mage is talking about Harry Potter. My teacher read us the first 2 books within a year back in the 90s. It must have been 98 or so because they were brand new at the time and very popular. It was my first experience of satanic panic. That completely makes sense. Eugene Bespalco. My dad still remembers how me and my mom took him to watch the second movie, and this many years later, he keeps complaining about this scene where she spins in the chair. Wait, oh, that's Twilight. Oh my god. Yes, I hate that. Terrible. It's so bad. Oh god, that was all a while ago. I'm very late. Perk says, hello, I'm new here. I discovered your channel through the Shadow of the Conqueror video about a week ago, and I've been binging all of your videos since. Thank you, Perk. What's your favorite so far? Like what have you really been enjoying? Eugene Bespalco says, shame. Imagine how much more fun Song of Achilles review would have been if you were pronouncing those names with a Greek accent. Okay, so the books I read while I was on my hiatus was the first one was called There Is No Ethan. It is a nonfiction book that I really enjoyed about a catfish situation. I'll talk about it, give you guys a little synopsis. Wild read, very disturbing, but also like very familiar to some of my experiences. Like it's I've never been catfished, but let me tell you, sometimes dating is just rough online. I then read a book called Beloved Beasts, which was also a nonfiction book. It is about the history of the conservation movement, in specifically mostly in the US, but also touches on some of the global stuff, specifically talking about community conservancies in Africa and stuff like that, which was absolutely fantastic. I also read, let me go look at what I sent Will. One second, guys. It's been a minute since I looked at all of this. Oh my god, YouTube, why do you hate me? Another one was Thorn, which is the Goose Girl fairy tale retelling, which I enjoyed more than I thought I would, but I do have some problems with it. And then I also read, where is it? Visit channel. So Ella Enchanted, Thorn. I read almost the entirety of the Sherlock Holmes canon, and I mean like there was like 97 or 87 hours on the audiobook, and I've got like 3 hours left. So the whole thing. Audible has read by Stephen Fry with a lot of forwards and stuff like that written by Stephen Fry. It is fantastic if you need, like, if you just want something on in the background to listen to. Stephen Fry does an excellent job. But of course, I don't think anyone would expect me to read the entire Sherlock Holmes canon and not have some discussions about some of the problematique things in it. And I also read, I'm actually 2/3 the way through a book called The Witch King by Martha Wells, which, for those of you who remember or who have watched it, that was the Murderbot series we read. So I've been reading that. And it was, yeah, I'm reading it right now. I'm still in the process of developing my thoughts on it. I'll Know Hiking says, congrats on the channel growth. Very entertaining vids. Thank you. I appreciate that. I can't take. I have to say, Will is like the backbone of this thing. He really, like, without him, this would not happen. So all thanks and praise must be heaped upon him. He's gonna love that I said that. He deserves all of the praise, guys. Do 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 do. Ooh, this is a great question. Laffy Daffy says, would you ever talk about Ursula K. Le Guin on the channel? I remember you mentioned being a fan of hers and would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to. I love her books. I've read most of her sci-fi. I think there's one I haven't read, but I've read a ton of them, and one of my favorite books of all times is her Dispossessed book, which has a very special place in my heart, even though I don't think it's her best. It has a very special place in my heart, and I would love to talk about it. I think Will would really enjoy her sci-fi. I think Katie would really enjoy The Left Hand of Darkness. She's absolutely fantastic, and I think it would be so fascinating to do so. Unfortunately, it's one of those where the algorithm would just hate it. Like, it wouldn't get any traction, and it would just not do great, which we're all fine with. Luckily, Patreon plug. Because of the Patreon, we're able to do books that we know are going to do terribly without it, like, affecting us too much, and it is only through that we are able to really devote ourselves to books that we know are going to do absolute trash, and it just sucks. Like, Ursula K. Le Guin's fantastic. She's so good, but unfortunately, the stuff that the algorithm likes are a lot of book talk stuff and bookstagram books, and every once in a while we do one of those. Like, we just have to throw it to help us get picked back up into the algorithm. Shadow of the Conqueror, we weren't expecting it to, but it really did a lot for us in that respect. But I would love to. Maybe we'll do an Ursula K. Le Guin month. Or a couple months where we read one of her books each month. Because if we did a whole month, that would really trash our views. Aw, thank you. Zalda Kisersi? I don't know if I said that right. I was rewatching the Savior series when I saw this notification. Thank you. Sloan Ranger says the other fairy tale retellings by the same author as Enchanted are fantastic. I loved the Two Princesses of Bamar, and I think there was another one I read of hers that I really enjoyed. I would like to reread quite a bit of her stuff and then just do a video. Maybe Katie and I can do it. I mean, Will is more than welcome to, but I think it would be really fun to just do a retrospective on her books, because she really, like, it's such an interesting, like, take on young adult and fairy tale stuff. Science fantastic. Gabriella Allen Paz. I read some of The Witch King, but my library loan expired before I could finish it. It's very strange with that one. I was really into it for the first, like, half, probably because I was traveling a ton at the time. But since I've gotten back, I've been busy and I just haven't picked it up. Oh, Adressa96 says, fairy tale retellings just don't have the same vibe anymore if you compare today's output to what was published in the 90s. I think part of the problem is we've really gone hard on trying to make fairy tales feminist, but in a very, like, kind of single-minded way. Oh no! Can you guys hear me? Oop. Can you hear me? Will, can you hear me? Okay, it looks like you can hear me. I don't know why, but it says my camera cannot connect. Okay. Let's see if I just unplug this guy.
Oh, hey, you can hear me now, right?
I can hear you now. You weren't in the stream before.
Yeah, no, I look like such a hobo, which is why I'm not usually on stream. But hey, guys, I've had a very tough 24 hours.
Oh my
So
god, a really tough 24 hours.
yeah, that was kind of crazy. But okay, yeah, you changed cameras. It looks like.
Yeah, if for some reason my normal camera won't connect, like it keeps saying that it can't be connected to the browser. I'll try plugging it in again.
Yeah, I think you just have to live. Whoa,
Oh, I'm here.
live with a yeah, with a green tint. It was looking so nice earlier. Wow. Okay, your camera is not doing well. This is, by the way, the hole in my wall. Ask Valerie about it sometimes. She sees it a lot when we're gaming. It's one of the reasons I don't actually record from here. Okay, you're back.
I am back.
Okay, yeah, I think it's just that, like, your camera disconnects, but I don't think it's a problem with, like, the software or anything. You just reconnect the camera, you should be fine.
Yeah. So if you're hearing the echo, it's coming off of Will's computer because he doesn't have headphones in.
Because the USBs, my computer had that. I gotta just get a new computer. I'm so tired, guys. All right. I will let Maria take over. You are doing very well. You should mention that I'm handsome more, but
I literally said that everybody should heap praise upon you.
I was there for that part. I agreed with that. I thought that was very nice. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, William. Okay. So is the echoing still happening? No, I can't hear it anymore. I think it's good. So I think we are doing. Someone said that Sarah J. Maas pulled the plug on the stream. I love that. That's hysterical. But yeah, back to what I was saying before was I really think that a lot of current fairy tales were trying so hard to like take anything. I mean, and it's like one of the problems with a lot of the Disney remakes is like anything that people like there's that stage of feminism where we were like Belle has got Stockholmed and like she doesn't even know the beast and she can't possibly like nobody was looking at that being like, yeah, that's an accurate display of healthy romance. And a lot of fairy tales, like that's not how they're supposed to function. And so I think sometimes when we try to make them as like the goodest girls and boys possible, someone made the point of now fairy tales are a lot of a fairy just telling you it's your choice. You get to choose whatever you do. Like, thanks, that's the minimum. Like the bar's on the floor. Science Fantastic says Belle does not have fucking Stockholm syndrome. Holy crap, I hate that. Yeah, it's just it was like it. I think there was just a stage where everybody was really just like into just like picking apart fairy tales and being like Cinderella is so passive and all of that stuff and like there's obviously something in these stories that attracted people and had them stand the test of time. And I think when you retell them because you're exploring something unique that you want to look at, I think that resonates with people more than just being like, I'm going to write a feminist retelling. And I think that like that happens a lot where people go in and they're like, I'm going to write this version of this story, but through a specific lens. And it makes it so that sometimes the stories themselves can feel a bit perfunctory, instead of feeling like an organic story that's trying to be told. Um, so Bananima says a reductivist form of feminism that feels injected into the stories, tbh, and that is exactly it, 100%. Marrocat says flaws are pretty good for characters. They are. I don't know why we keep like trying to file off anything off of our characters, which denies them any sense of growth. Science Fantastic says Cinderella keeps her good heart and maintains hope that things will get better. That is honestly a very uplifting message. And also, when you look at the original, especially like the original Chinese, the connection in the story to her mother and her, like in it, it's her, like the spirit of her mother is who helps her through a lot of the stuff. Like, there's a lot of interesting ways. Oh, you guys want to hear something crazy? There is a version of Cinderella that is Greek, but the translation is little saddle slut. She sits in a saddle in the corner. But it literally, please go forth and look at it. There was a website that just had a ton of different fairy tale retellings from all over the world. But it's literally called Little Saddle Slut. And it makes me so happy. I did a presentation on fairy tales in one of my college courses, and nothing brought me greater joy than being able to include that little tidbit in my presentation. Yeah. But back to what I think that the author of Ella Enchanted does really well is she, like, if you think about Ella Enchanted as a retelling of Cinderella, it's not like, ooh, let me do a modern take of Cinderella or anything, or let me just flesh out who she is. She added an extra thing to it, which was, what if somebody had a curse that they had to obey? Like, what would their life be like? And then connecting that, and so it adds a thing to the story that's there, and just you get to explore a lot of really interesting, cool concepts. And so I think that's one of the big difference that you see. Idrissa96 says, I recently saw Lady Macbeth retelling, and if they make her a poor girl boss manipulated by Macbeth, my rage will be sung by the muses. I love Lady Macbeth in the actual story. When I was in high school, I did a Shakespeare competition, and I did Lady Macbeth's monologue, her big one, where she decides to kill what's his face and convince Macbeth to do it. And it is, I love her. I think a woman being like, yeah, no, you won't do it. You need to push. I'm gonna help you climb to greatness. I think I've mentioned before on this channel, one of my favorite things, especially in historical settings, are women who are working within the structure they have to climb and grab at whatever power they can, utilizing what society deems valuable in them, using that to get a leg up and grab power. Ugh, delicious. I love it. I don't give me a historical retelling where like she's like, but what if like everybody just treated me equal and like I was a value? No, give me a woman being like, I shall work within the system and bring them down, and I shall make a man love me so much that I can make him do whatever I want. But people will think he's in charge, but secretly I'll be in the back. Like, that's like, come on, guys. That's delicious. Why do we keep having to girl boss everything? And also, I just think it's okay to write a story where a girl wants to get married. As someone who does not care about marriage or the institution of marriage, I think it's okay. Especially if you're writing a historical book. That's fine. We don't have to vilify women who, especially when marriage was the tool you used to get your own household, get a leg up in society. We don't have to vilify marriage. Da, da, da. Chris M says, yes, that's empowering for women. We've been drawing on our own power for ages. I'm sick of women always being seen as default victims. Nah, there are tons of examples of women using the systems around them to get power in history, and it's fantastic. Eugene Benz Falco, yes, Katie did just donate to us, which is herself. She said, I just want to be a sugar mama. Ba ba ba. Do do do. Bananamus says, but what if she was Girl Boss, and also if every man grows suspiciously curly mustaches when they meet Girl Boss MC? Yeah, that's the other thing. When people try to do feminist retellings where like the main character has become the girl boss of all girl bosses, sometimes it ends up being where like the male characters end up either being extra special, the bestest boy on the planet because he gives you a choice and like thinks like a 21st century dude, and then everyone else is just the most mustache twirling villain on the planet. And it just makes for, I don't think, the most engaging stories. I think it comes across a little ham-fisted, and especially as someone who enjoys reading like uh Jane Austen, like genuinely, I find those so much more compelling, and oftentimes I like looking at how you can read those through how are these women empowering themselves, what is happening within these stories that are actually women gaining better positions in society. I'm much more interested in that than trying to write than reading historical books that are like, oh, this girl woke up with 21st century ideals. And now she's like, why doesn't everybody see that, like, we all, like, I'm not here for it. I'm just not. Idrissa96 says, I read a lot of historical romance, and there's a whole trend of the heroine being this perfect intersectional feminist who falls in love with the one guy in England who thinks she deserves basic rights. It's so, yeah, it's just a lot of stuff. Eugene Belspecco, oh, the man is gay, so he's the ally of the girl boss. And then you have that a lot. Yeah, it's I don't know. I think just trying to write a retelling of a fairy tale and engage in it in your own way or bringing a new perspective, I think that's really great. But I think we've got a little too stuck on the feminist retellings. Were there other questions people asked? We kind of got lost between my tech mishap and going off about fairy tale retellings. Do 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 do. Da, 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 da. Author jail to all of those who wrote it. Author jail, one of Will's best figurative inventions. Author jail. Do. Oh, hello, Nemorales, the scholarly fool. Welcome. You didn't miss much. This is a live stream. I kind of talked about stuff in the beginning, and then people have been asking questions, just some Q&A, if you will, and then I'm going to talk about some of the books I read during my hiatus from the podcast. So that is, yeah, that's it. Just, and as Katie said, you missed nothing, just Maria, because this is just Maria. It's like, when the Oreos have the like the triple stuffed and the like quadruple stuff, and then it's all stuff. It's all Maria, baby. Ooh, Science Fantastic asked, I asked about your experience reading all of Sherlock Holmes and how it contrasts to modern interpretations. It was really enlightening about how much modern interpretations, and specifically the ones that I've seen, have made Sherlock, like, one of the things I realized reading the entire canon is that Sherlock is actually quite charming, and he is, in a lot of social settings, he actually, like, hits the, like, with his clients, he's very like respectful, and if he's not, it's because they're hitting him with negative energy. He's often very helpful. Like if a woman is crying in front of him, he is trying to be helpful. He can be, Watson regularly comments that he can often be like kind and soft when the need. And it's just, because I had only ever interacted with Sherlock Holmes in the modern interpretations, I'm talking the movies with Jude Law and Katie. Katie. What's the guy who played with the Jude Law? What's his? Oh my God! How am I? Iron Man. It's Iron Man. What's his? Robert Downey Jr. Thank you. So that the Elementary, which is the the modern retelling of Sherlock that's set in New York with what's his face and oh my God, I'm bad at names right now. What's her name? That beautiful actress who played Joan Watson. Oh my God, am I dying? Lucy Liu, thank you. Oh my God, guys, it's rough out here. So that, and then obviously BBC's Sherlock. Those had really painted this idea of Sherlock as kind of like, obviously he is an eccentric. He always is an eccentric throughout the canon, but there's actually like a warmth to him that comes out more often in the stories, and he shows a lot of care for what he sees are injustices and for people way more than you think it would. And also, I realized that between first working like there's a lot of things that the modern retellings really pick and choose about how they portray the series, that reading the original I was like, oh wow, these are much more well-rounded. I would say the one that I feel that gets of the modern adaptations, I think the best Sherlock is the one from the Elementary. I find he's got the eccentricity, but he's also like nice to people and charming, and he's not like a dick all the time. Um and oh, also Great Mouse Detective, excellent Sherlock and Holmes. Excellent. And it's the first, or Sherlock and Watson. And it's the first one where they're like, we're going to make Watson chubby. Because let me tell you, towards the end, Watson has put on some weight. He's got a little tum. Okay? Um, uh, so Sherlock as a functioning sociopath is a modern intention. Yes, it is. He definitely is odd, and there are times where Watson in the originals talks about how it's hard to tell how much he cares about stuff, but that he does deeply care about stuff. It's more like if he is a sociopath, he's able to interact with people in a less abrasive way than you get in a lot of the adaptations. He still does a lot of weird experiments and like plays music at all hours of the night and like has a lot of like those odd things and has his like hyper focuses, but he is with most of his clients. And again, if the clients are giving him sass, he gives it right back. Like if you walk into Holmes with an ounce of you're not taking him seriously, he's not going to take you seriously. But when people are really distraught about stuff, he can sometimes be a little flippant, but he's often like, I'm here, I will help you. And he's very caring. I just finished I forgot what the actual story is called, but it's the one where this guy has his old army friend who's been missing, and his family is like, oh, he went on a world tour, he'll be back in a year. And his friend's like, no, I don't think he would have done that without telling me. And he goes to visit, and he sees his friend being locked away in a cabin somewhere with like weird marks in his face, and it turns out that he has leprosy. And Holmes figures this out and specifically brings an expert in leprosy to help this family out, because he realizes they're trying to protect their son from being put away in an institution that would segregate him from the rest of society. And it's just like this really kind, lovely thing to do. But like, it was just like he does that all the time where he's like, I anticipated the problem and I've brought a solution. And I'm like, you're just so nice. Like, Sherlock Holmes is just nice. And that is what the modern adaptations have taken away from him. Sherlock is all about that sweet, sweet empathy. Yeah. And Maroquette says, yep, he's just autistic. You could absolutely read him that way. Idris in 96, there are several Sherlock stories where he basically helps women caught in horrible situations with their family and employers, so it's clear he has so much compassion. There are so many stories. One of my favorite that I read was this woman, her maid, and her, like, the guy she actually likes. Her husband was really, really abusive. He ends up getting killed, and they stage an elaborate way to try, like, cover it up. Sherlock figures it out, but knows her husband was a shit human and was like, you guys go, you got it, like, live your best life, buds. I'll help you cover this up. Like, he's just so. And so Eugene Piscalco, but is Sherlock a feminist? Sherlock has some problematic things about the way he thinks women works. There's quite a few, and this is obviously coming a bit from Doyle. There's multiple points where Watson's like, Sherlock naturally thinks women are a bit emotional and erratic, and he cares for them a lot. But there's a couple points where they say some stuff, and I'm like, though the other thing about the modern adaptations that I freaking hate, why do we keep romancing Irene Adler and Sherlock? The actual story that has Irene Adler and Sherlock in it is fantastic because she's the only woman and one of the only humans that legitimately bests Sherlock. He he underestimates her because she's a woman. And like Sherlock had to get smacked down into his place, and she just like is 5 steps ahead of him the whole time, gets the better of him, and then he realizes that he was completely wrong about the situation. He believed what this guy said about Irene, and he was wrong, and that guy was actually the jerk. And he refers to her as the woman the whole time because that's the woman that bested Sherlock. And so it's just this really cool story. Also, she runs off with her new husband. So at no point was it a romance. So I don't know why we keep making Irene Adler Sherlock's love interest. It's a very silly direction to take it. I just love the idea of this woman who just swoops into his life and makes him rethink his entire perspective on the female sex, and who yeets out to live her best life, because that's literally what happens. She's like, I'm not here to fuck shit up. I just want to go and live my best life with the guy I love. Katie says, it's hot. No, I don't like it. So, Eugene Bissalko, I don't know about Irene Adler, but Laura Pulver, who played her in the modern adaptation, can do whatever she wants in that role and with life in general. The thing is, you can have a really cool Irene, but it's so reductionist to just take the one woman that has a significant role in Sherlock Holmes and make her a love interest. She's significant because she beats Holmes. Also, Sherlock, the BBC Sherlock, fuck them. Fuck them for so many reasons. Number one, they made Irene lose to Sherlock. The whole point of her fucking story is she's the only woman and one of the only people ever to best and pull one over on Sherlock Holmes. And BBC Sherlock was like, what if we made her in love with him? So first off, what if we made her a lesbian who fell in love with him just cause? And she also loses to him. How cool would that be? I hate it. I hate it so much. I have so many problems. I have so many problems with the BBC Sherlock. And I say this as someone who loved the first 2 seasons. Loved them. But then the 3rd season came out. I watched the first episode. I was very angry. I watched the 2nd episode. I was very bored. And I never went back. Never went back. What I know of that series and how it turns out comes from video essays I've watched on the subject, and I hate it. I hate it so much. It's so bad. I don't know how they pulled one over on us. That's the great magic of the BBC Sherlock, is it made us think it was the smart thing that was going to give us cool explanations, because that's the awesome thing about the Sherlock Holmes stories. There's obviously some problematic stuff, the race is real, let me tell you. There's some stories where you're like, ooh, this was written by a man who grew up at the end of the Victorian era. Ooh, we've got some problematic views. But the magic of it is they present you a story, and then at the end, Sherlock takes you step by step through his deduction and his reasoning that got him to the place. And the entire time watching BBC's Sherlock, I thought that was going to happen, especially after they finished um the end of season 2. You're like, I can't wait to see the explanation for how Sherlock pulled this off. And the writers basically told us all, go spend 2 years thinking about what happened and how we did it and how he did it, and see if you were right. And then the first episode is literally a big fu to the entire fandom, and it just felt very disingenuous. And it also, I think the Sherlock Holmes stories were too smart for Moffat and Gatiss. That, I think, is just the problem, is those men were not smart enough to write compelling mysteries. Yes, the Mormon story is A Study in Scarlet, which, let me tell you, because that's the first one that comes up in the audiobook set I read. That confused me so hard. All of a sudden, I'm in England, listening to the first half, and then it just yeets you into fucking US Mormonism. It was very discombobulating at the time. But yeah, it was just really and Cumberbatch and Martin, I do like, and I love their chemistry as a John and Watts, John and Sherlock. Like, I think they have a lot of cool chemistry as like a friend group. For those who were, like, ship them a lot, I absolutely get it. But I just think that it was just very disingenuous to the heart of what uh Conan Doyle was trying to do with the series, and they didn't deliver on a lot of stuff that they said they would, and it just makes me very, very angry. Now, Idrisa96 says, I'm a lot kinder to Moffat as a writer. He gave me the best episodes of the Ninth and 10th Doctor. Let me tell you, his episode of the Ninth Doctor, the something child, the one with the gas mask, that is an incredible. I think about that episode of TV regularly. And also, he wrote some fantastic 10th Doctor episodes. He's great in short stories. Like, Moffat needs to stick to short stories. He does a great job with short stories. But as a showrunner, he gets way too obsessed with the quirkiness of his main characters. And I think that's one of the huge flaws with his season as Doctor Who showrunner and Sherlock. The way he treats Sherlock and the way he treated the 11th Doctor have the same fundamental problem. He is so warm to their form and just like he thinks they're like the coolest things ever, that he keeps upping the ante and just making them cooler and cooler without any of the background that you need to get there. So, for instance, what makes Sherlock cool is you get to see his deductive reasoning, but in the BBC Sherlock, it's all just words on the page, and he sits there and goes into his mind palace and thinks about stuff, and then he just has suddenly remembered something that elucidates a piece of the case, where that's not how it works. I don't know how many times in the actual canon he like looks something up. Like, he has one of Sherlock's most prized possessions is his like chronicle of shit. Like, he just has, what are those things called that are in alphabetical order that just tell you a bit about not an maybe like an encyclopedia. It's different. He refers to it, but it's basically he has an encyclopedia that he has just created. And you don't know how many times that guy busted open and looked something up. Like, there's the I just listened to the story where there's a lady who everybody thinks is a vampire, and he looks up the term vampire because he doesn't have it right in his brain. And you see how Sherlock gets to his endpoints, and in BBC's Sherlock, you don't see that. It's a lot of, how cool is he? His brain's a supercomputer. He can just think of things, and it's all there, and he remembered everything. And it's really like it takes what is, and what Sherlock in the canon is very proud of as practical deductive reasoning, and it makes it magic in the same way that Moffat was obsessed with the 11th Doctor as this all-powerful, like, suddenly Doctor Who went from being the Doctor interacting with all of these stories where to every single story is about the Doctor. Everyone's after the Doctor. They're like, yeah, this group of people is after the Doctor. This group of people is also after the Doctor. The Doctor is the most important being in the universe. And he just gets so obsessed with his main characters that he cannot write a compelling story around it, because you need those little tiny details that really put you into a story. And that's why he's great at writing individual episodes, like, and he has written some excellent episodes, like, really fantastic. But as a showrunner, oof. And I now that I've read the Sherlock Holmes canon, I'm even angrier at BBC's Sherlock than I was before. I think Elementary does a much better job with the characters. One of the things that it kind of gets right is that for a period of time, Watson is a bit like Sherlock's sober companion, where he doesn't like that he sits there and just gets high on shit. And so he tried, like, and he actively, there's points where he was like, I'd spent years trying to break him of his habit, and I would watch him regularly. So making Joan Watson his sober companion really compelling. Also, one of the things that happens in the canon, it's not successful, is he does try teach Watson his methods, which Elementary does. And I find Joan and Sherlock in Elementary very compelling as a friendship. Like, I love them, and I love that Sherlock. Unfortunately, you just have these two great characters and great setup and understanding of them in a American crime procedural. And it just means that it can get very repetitive. And it honestly, I think that's the biggest disservice, because I watched a lot of Elementary. I think I watched like the first 7 seasons. It was a comfort show for a very long time, but it just gets very repetitive, and it's hard. Like, I think those two characters would have been much, if they got the treatment of like BBC Sherlock, but with those two characters and smaller, more bombastic stories, it would have been a lot more interesting, especially where we can focus more on like the deductive side of. And that's the other thing I'm going to give Elementary over BBC's Sherlock, is you see how Sherlock gets to his conclusions as the episode. Like, if you're paying attention, which is the whole point of the Sherlock canon, if you pay attention, you can get to, you can piece it together as well. And I think a good adaptation of Sherlock and Watson should do that. Ba ba ba. I'm looking to see if there's any comments. I just talked a lot. I just talked a lot. Sorry guys. I went hard down a rabbit hole. Oh, Rum Skittle says Moffat's main goal is to make us all cry, and he has various ways to do it. Sometimes it's with a great storytelling, and sometimes it's with destroying a great story. Let me tell you. Morley says, and so this is about Doctor Who. I disliked Amy and Clara so much because they were perfect, quirky most of the time, and he couldn't let them go, especially Clara. I think having, and also the other thing that I don't love is this obsession that happened. It started a bit with Rose, so this goes back to what's his face's era, but I like having companions for Doctor Who that aren't in love with the Doctor, if that makes sense. And from my understanding from older Who is that that was not a thing. We got real into having people in love. Like, I preferred Clara and the 12th Doctor as a combo much more, because she wasn't in love with him, and I find pining after the Doctor. Like, I liked Rose and 10. I thought that worked, but it was because the chemistry worked, and also like they knew when to cut it gave you a compelling ending. Science Fantastic says Sherlock's intelligence and deductive reasoning is demonstrated instead of being told to us. Yes. Oh my god. Let me tell you. TV shows should not struggle with show, don't tell, but BBC Sherlock struggles with show, don't tell. They tell you a lot, and you don't get to see it. It's just words popping up while he's in his mind palace. Can you tell I have a lot of problems with BBC Sherlock? So Rose, Martha, and Donna are all distinct and complex, and Amy and Clara are mostly just hot and sassy. Yes. And I like Martha. Martha gets some flack, but I love Martha. Of course, Donna is my favorite because Donna is the best companion. She is like best bros with the doctor in a way that like it's definitely got a Watson Holmes flair. 10th Doctor and Donna, like that is perfection. I love it. Um So Sloan Ranger says, yeah, book Sherlock is smart and using resources, while TV Sherlock is all about him being a savant. And that's the thing is, Sherlock is so puts so much emphasis on how much studying, learning, cataloging, and chronicling he does. Like, yes, he has a ton of stuff in his head, but he spent a lot of time, and you see him use his resources throughout the series, like regularly, and it's just so cool. Um, and also how he uses. Let me tell you, Watson gets used all the time because Sherlock's like he'll never be able to figure out what I'm actually doing, so he'll be the perfect rube to make everybody believe what I need them to believe. It's hysterical. Um, Science Fantastic says, I hate it when this character is a genius is used as shorthand for lazy writing. It really is. Bananima says, yeah, when you make a story where none of the supporting characters can do anything without the main character, that's a problem. And that's Moffat's problem. As a showrunner, he struggles with that a ton. The best way I've seen the difference between Russell T Davis's and Moffat eras articulated was Russell T Davis wants to travel with the Doctor, so the show is from the companion perspective, but Moffat wants to be the Doctor, and thus it's from the Doctor's perspective. That's 100% it. That is a fantastic analysis of that. Robert Borland said, for me, it is the difference between clever versus smart writing. Clever is the author trying to tell you how smart they are, while smart writing makes the reader feel smart. And it engages you. One of the really cool things is there were points in some of the stories where something happens and I went, ooh, and then or like a clue comes up and then I went, ooh, and then Sherlock went, ooh, or his hello there, hello. He does that a lot, and I love it. And I'm like, oh, am I on the same page as Sherlock? And sometimes I am, and I'm very proud of that. Lemon the Lemur says, without having read it, it's almost like the modern interpretation is scaling up his social faux pas based on how his idiosyncrasies would have been received back in the time period. And potentially that's it, but for the most part, like, while people, and it's written from Watson's perspective, most of it, while people are like, wow, he's an eccentric guy, for the most part, he's just really well respected. Sometimes Scotland Yard, the detectives in Scotland Yard can, you know, not respect some of Sherlock's deductions initially, but for the most part, people don't treat him like he's a weird social pariah. Like he's actually quite well respected. Um, da, 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 da. Morales said, to be fair, and this is about Elementary being a crime procedural. To be fair, most of Sherlock as a book series is crime procedurals before crime procedurals came TV. And that is really true. And it's why I think Elementary is a more like true to the story, but I would like it to be some of my favorite short stories are the ones that aren't actual crimes. It's just a mystery that like a family, like there's the one where the lady's like, my fiance didn't show up for our wedding and it's really weird, and he always has like a weird beard on, and he talks weird, but I really liked him. And Sherlock's like, it's actually your stepfather, and your mom and him were playing a prank on you and didn't want you to get married so you wouldn't take your money away. And like those short stories where it's just like this interpersonal problem between people, or Sherlock is just helping someone figure it out, I really like those, and I wish we got retellings that focused on some of those and not just the crime stuff. Ba, ba, ba. Oh, I sincerely can't recommend Soviet Sherlock enough, especially The Hound of Baskervilles. It's fantastic. Soviet Sherlock? I have not heard of this. I will have to look into this. But also, let me tell you, The Hound of Baskervilles it is so good. You hear it all the time. It comes up all the time. BBC's Sherlock thought they ate when they were like, we're gonna completely put this on its head. There will be no hound. It's all gonna be like a drug that gives you a hallucinations. They thought they were so smart. That is one of the best mysteries. It is so good. That's one of the actual novels. So there's a bunch of short story collections, and then there are whole ass novels. And The Hound of Baskerville is a whole ass novel, and it is so good. It's one of my favorites, which feels very basic to say. I feel like it's one of everyone's favorites, but it is so good. And BBC Sherlock really went, tee, we're going to be so smart and subvert everyone's expectations. Just tell a good story. Stop trying to be smart and just tell a good story, you pains in the butt. Lone Ranger, Maria, have you seen the Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes series? I have not. I need to make notes. So we have, give me 1 second, guys. I need to make some notes because please recommend any good Sherlock adaptations. I freaking love it. Sherlock. So we have Soviet Sherlock. And then we have Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes. Okay, beautiful. Do 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 do. Oh, so Nemorales also points out the entire romance for the Doctor is weird because he's so incredibly ace. Same with Sherlock. Why do we keep trying to romance these people with people? I don't love it. Da, 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 da. Yes, that's the other thing. The elementary Sherlock is constantly studying and experimenting and constantly pulling in resources from other people, like pulling in experts. It's great. I love it. It's so much better. Please watch it. Christopher Eccleston as the Ninth Doctor makes me laugh because he was in that awful G.I. Joe movie and he hated it. Oh, I've never seen that G.I. Joe movie. Let me tell you, I love Christopher Eccleston. I love Ninth Doctor. He has a very special place in my heart. When so surprise, Katie got me into Doctor Who because she had just watched, I think, the first or second season of the 12th Doctor, whichever one that the astronaut stuff happens with River Song. And she was like, you need to watch all of this. And she was like, you can get through the ninth Doctor like kind of quick. It doesn't really matter. Let me tell you, I love Christopher Eccleston as the Ninth Doctor. There's something so broken, and watching him find hope and find the ability to heal is just, it's an excellent arc. That season has an excellent arc for the Doctor. I'd highly recommend it. Oh yeah, shout out. Morley says Donna is my favorite, but Rose's mother, she was brilliant. I loved her. Loved her. Da, 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 da. I'm so behind on comments, guys. I'm so sorry. I couldn't. Da, 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 da. Rum Skittle says Psych is a good adaptation of Sherlock. Show Don't Tell is definitely there, and I think the little twist where Sean pretends to be a psychic is refreshing. I've never seen Psych, but I have heard it's pretty good. Rachel the Radiant says, I've never read Sherlock. It's on my list. Some of the modern ones seem supernatural when I think he's more realistic, or am I wrong? So, it is bizarre. Conan Doyle himself was super into the occult. Like, he wanted to go to seances, and, like, he believed a bunch of wild shit. And yet, somehow, Sherlock Holmes is so firmly grounded in reality as a mystery. Every once in a while, it'll present a problem that looks like it's going to be supernatural, and Sherlock's like, nah, there has to be a reasonable explanation for this. And then he finds out what's actually happening because he knows if something looks supernatural, it's probably a human fucking around. So it's the canon itself is firmly grounded in reality. Anything that looks supernatural ends up having a practical explanation in the end, and it's fantastic. I'm still reading. Eugene Belspecco. I was no years old when I learned the Soviet Sherlock has more than one episode. What is Soviet Sherlock? This is crazy. Sloan Ranger, yes, Hounds of Baskerville is deliciously gothic. Delicious. The Moors. as a creepy location. There's this thing about these horses stumbling into this part of the moors where there are these bogs and just getting sucked into the bogs, and you just hear them crying as they die. Oh, it's divine. It's divine. And also just the how, like, oh, it gets the heart racing. My friend Steven made the argument that Hounds of Baskerville isn't actually a mystery, it's a horror. And I would argue against that. I think it is a mystery with horror elements because it definitely is a mystery. And the whole time you're like, there's gonna be a practical explanation. This is fucking Sherlock Holmes. What is it? So it definitely has a mystery, but it definitely, the vibes are immaculate. Like, I would love a good Hounds of Baskerville adaptation as like a nice cozy Halloween fall movie. Absolutely. Um, do 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 do. I'm so behind. Mario Cat says Eccleston is really good, and had he been longer, he might have been a favorite. Good, at least he came back from the for the audio adventures. I really liked him. I think people. I remember at the time he had a northern. Uh, I think one of the things that I remember reading is he had a northern British accent, and that was something like the Doctor had only ever had a specific style of accent. Morley also said there is also a Japanese Miss Sherlock drama. I haven't watched it, but it is often praised by Sherlock fans. I'll add it to the list. Miss Sherlock. Ba, ba, ba. Oh, Will says, remember you have books to go over. Oops. Well, I mean, technically, I am talking about the books right now. Just one of them. Eugene Bisfalco says, shush, Will. This is no longer your channel. um, so I guess that's I'll just continue and wrap up my thoughts on the Sherlock canon. Obviously there are some problematic things in it. It was written by like a white guy in the, what is that era? It's not, is it? It's not Edwardian. I forgot what the era after um the Victorian is, before we start getting electricity. Um, it's also fascinating to watch the stories go from being set in the Victorian era to at the end, people are making phone calls. There's the story His Last Bow, which is the last like mystery thing that Sherlock deals with, where he thwarts a German spy's efforts to get access to British uh, um, information, and Sherlock comes in and helps thwart him kind of last minute. And it's one of the oddest told stories. It's a real break from form for Doyle, but it also, like, at the time, I think meant a lot to like the British public to have their like kind of, I won't say cultural mascot, but a bit of a cultural mascot help defeat Germany in a way for the war. Super interesting. I just read the one where I'm really bad with the names, like real bad. But the one where this lady gets offered a ton of money for her house, and they want everything in it, and it's kind of weird. And then her son died, and his book that he wrote got stolen, and it turns out this rich lady who wants to marry this other guy stole the book so she could burn it. So her story, uh, and that whole thing is happening. But then there is a black character in it, and let me tell you, it's uncomfortable to read. It's it's uncomfortable. And then in the story about the story where Watson meets his wife is a really compelling mystery, but there is a man from an island somewhere that is described in a way that is also very uncomfortable. Basically, anyone who is not white get some really interesting descriptions, and you can just tell the culture that this was written in. So as much as there's a lot of really cool interesting things in here, it is a little rough when you hit some of those points. And I don't think it's a reason not to read Sherlock Holmes. I think there's a lot of good here, but it is one of those things to take, like, to be aware of as you go into it, and to just take it with all the salt. Like, as I read it, I was just throwing fistfuls of salt into Doyle's face, going, if you were alive now, you'd be really ashamed of yourself, and you would probably rewrite this. Uh, but just really fun. It was such a nice, comforting read. I'd highly recommend doing some of it during the fall. A lot of the stories happen September, November, and October. Don't ask me why. But really fun. Okay, so now we'll actually talk. Now that we have sufficiently talked about the Sherlock stuff, I will talk about Thorn, just because it was something that Atala recommended, who popped in. Yay, I haven't missed the Thorn talk. No, you have not. Um, and I Thorn I read because I asked for recommendations because the second hurricane was going to hit uh, Florida, and I knew I wouldn't have power for a couple of days. I ended up only being without power for about 12 hours, which is very lucky. Some people I know didn't have power for 4 or 5 days. But I asked for books to read because I had charged up my Kindle. I was ready to go. And Atala recommended Thorn, and I read it, and I was like, I could do with like a nice fairy tale retelling. And the Goose Girl is one that you don't see a lot. And like the super uber basic version of the Goose Girl is this girl's a princess, her dad gets real weird. I'm pretty sure this is the one where her dad wants to marry her, and she's like, oop, not doing this. She goes to another kingdom, escapes, ends up becoming a goose, like a girl who takes care of gooses over there. And there's a whole thing where she goes to like a castle a ton of times, and like, she has different dresses, and then she marries the prince, blah blah blah. But this is a retelling of that. And it's really interesting because you don't see this story told a lot. It is kind of a interesting fairy tale because it's got some bones of Cinderella, but the girl is always a princess. And I really enjoyed it. I got to read it uncritically. I do have that part of my brain that I can't turn off, but I, for the most part, just enjoyed it. Now, I will say it has some pacing issues. A lot of the action just gets thrown in the last fourth. It has a good pacing before that, but one of the reasons I really like this book is it's kind of cozy and slice of life. Like there's a portion in the middle where she's just like, so basic premise, this girl is a princess, her brother's a dick to her, her mom doesn't really respect her. And this is one of the parts, like, it took me a second to get into because the beginning, like, her family is such a dick to her that you're like, this is a little much. Like, we're a little heavy handed. It feels uh it's a hint contrived, and I think rewriting and reworking the beginning could have helped. But basically, we have this girl who's in a tiny little like kingdom. It's basically like a city state kind of thing, and this really big kingdom from all the way somewhere else would like to marry their prince to our main character, and her mother is like, I don't even know why they'd want you. Probably because you'd be easy to lose because a bunch of their royal family keeps dying, so they want someone that nobody would actually care about. And again, her mom ends up like becoming a little bit supportive throughout the book, but I think if they had made her mom just like a really tough practical woman instead of just like a huge jerk. And her mom is a jerk to her specifically because there was this bitchy girl who stole a necklace, and then everybody accused a servant of stealing the necklace, but our main character saw it and was like, no, actually, bitchy girl over there stole it. And then they found it, and it basically ruined this girl's reputation. She no longer can marry anyone good. She's been thrown into her father's estate and basically can't come out. And her mother's really pissed about it because that girl's father is her mother's head advisor. And she's like, could you not have, like, why? And the main character's like, I was not going to let that servant girl get punished because of what she did. And her mother's like, you couldn't have handled it any other way. Like, that is head advisor. You got to think politically. But her mom's also just kind of a bitch. But I would have liked if she'd been a practical, hard woman, but who was still kind of fond of her daughter, but in a way that the main character struggles with interpreting. and her brother's just like a raging abusive person. Anyway, our main character has she spends a lot of time in the kitchens. She's a helpful bub. Um, but then she gets taken away to the other kingdom. She also has a wind spirit that she's friends with, and you're gonna at the beginning you're like, what is this wind spirit? Like she goes and she hangs out with it sometimes, and then like it disappears for a huge chunk of the book. That's weird. It ends up being important. Um, she goes to the other kingdom on the way over. I don't know. I can't get into the plot too much, guys, but please note that there's a fairy evil lady who's all white with like black pits for eyes, so obviously heckin' evil, and she's trying to kill the kingdom that this princess is gonna marry into. Like she's got it out for them, and like she's gunning for them, and our main character gets swept up in this problem, and basically this evil fairy lady wants the prince and is trying to use our main character and ends up swapping our main character into the body of the bitch girl who stole that stuff that I mentioned before. So now our main character is no longer a princess, she's just a random redhead. And the bitchy, not great girl is in the princess's body. And our princess is like, oh my god, I don't have to be a princess? I'd never wanted to be a princess. Fuck that life. I'm just gonna be chill and live life. And they get to the kingdom. The king is like, you'll go be a goose girl. And she's like, bet, I'd love to do that. And she ends up really liking being a goose girl. But the girl who's in her body now doesn't have the knowledge she needs to pretend to be this person. So every once in a while, she has to go into the castle and interact and do some stuff. And there's this nice stage in the middle where it's just her getting used to the simple life of being a goose girl, but also her struggling with she needs to decide if she is going to take responsibility for the terrible thing that's coming, because she knows the evil fairy lady swapped her body, which means that the woman in her body is probably going to be used to bring the downfall to the prince and the kingdom overall. And she's like, I kind of have some responsibility in this, but I don't want to be a princess. And if I tell people I'm the princess, she can't actually tell people, but she's like, but if I deal with this, what if I have to be a princess again? I don't want to do that. So there's this whole stage in the middle where she's kind of grappling with this problem, but learning about like the people on the ground, the everyday lives of the common folks, and realizing that like no, if she can make changes, she has a responsibility to do so. And it is really nice. And I believe some of the stuff there's some like action stuff that happens randomly. There's also the goose boy who's real he's not great. I don't like him. He tries to like assault her at one point, and she like hits him with a stick, and then yeah, and then while all this is happening, she's spending more time with the prince, because the prince is like, why did you write a letter for the princess? And why do you have the same handwriting as the princess? And Goose Girl's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I just write letters sometimes. I'm nothing. And so the prince kind of knows. He's like, oh shit, I think this is actually the princess in a different body. And he's getting to know her, and he's like he seems a bit of a dick. And the biggest problem with this book is like eventually our main character is going to end up with the prince, right? And at the end of the book they get married, but she doesn't fall in love with him, which is fine. She shouldn't. She barely knows the guy. He is in love with her though, because you find out he's actually the wind spirit that she knew back in her homeland, and so he's known her for years. Let me tell you, what a weird choice. What a weird choice to make as an author. And I don't mind it, because the book ends and you think, okay, here we have this character that we've gotten to know a little bit, but is still a bit flat for us. And our main character, he loves her. She does not love him, but, you know, she's marrying him. And they're kind of on friendly terms. I'd like to see the two of them fall in love. As a slow burn bitch, I'm here for that. I am here to have two characters being married that aren't fully in love with each other and have to learn to grow each other. I was so excited. So give it to me. And also there's a bunch of stuff that like in the last like 1/4 of the book, you like the evil fairy lady had there's a whole thing with them and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the book, I was like, I'm ready to see how they tackle all of the issues still facing them at the end of this book and how they fall in love. And then I found out the second book isn't even from the same character's point of view. And I was so sad. I finished that book and immediately bought the second one. I was so ready to dive right on in and see how these two crazy kids got to know each other and fell in love. Because that's such an interesting setup. No, it's from a completely different character's point of view. Our main character from this book, Thorn, the goose girl, pops up in that book and is a character in that book. But, like, why would you do such a beautiful setup? Why would you do such a beautiful setup and then just throw us to the wolves? Like, and I know it's not just me, because Atala had the same reaction. It's a fucking betrayal. You're so excited at the end of the first one, like, ooh, where's this gonna go? And then you're just, and I'm sure it connects into the same problems, but I guarantee you, you do not get the love story I thought that was going to unfold of her getting to know the, and also just to clear it up, he like, the prince is a mage and he like can make himself into a wind spirit and like travel around, and he did that to kind of escape his own life and stuff. And as he did it, he found a girl in the woods one day and she was really nice and talked to him as a wind spirit, and then he consistently just went and visited her on occasion and then, you know, fell in love with her. And that's why the kingdom went to marry her, because he was like, Dad would like to marry this princess I met in the mountains. She doesn't know who I am. Can you imagine telling someone that? She doesn't know who I am. But I fell in love with her as a wind spirit, and she just thinks I'm like a nice wind spirit that can say a word or two. Because like the wind spirit cannot talk except to say like one word at a time. He can kind of push a thought out there. So she's just like, my little elemental wind spirit friend, and then it turns out the fucking prince the whole time. What a weird. Oh yes, and the magic horse. There is a magic horse. His name is Falada, and I was gutted, gutted when they because he dies. He dies in the fairy tale as well, but he dies in the book as well, and it's just he's such a fun character, and it was very sad. Yeah, anyway, so interesting book. Problems pacing wise, absolute problems. We start a little bit too heavy handed with the she's a princess that works in the kitchens and her family doesn't understand her thing. But once we leave that and we get into the actual story, cute, cozy, good stuff, magic horse, nice side characters that feel integral to the story, and that when she becomes like when at the end when she becomes herself, some of the one woman she became friends with as a goose girl ends up becoming her lady's maid. And I'm like, I love that. I love this continuation. I like how these characters connect. And then, yeah, I haven't read the second one. I will. Maybe once I read the whole series, I'll do a review, like an actual review video. Maybe I'll make Katie read it, and she can do it with me. Okay, next, we're going to talk about There Is No Ethan. There Is No Ethan is a nonfiction book about a catfish, specifically the author who's like a sociology professor. Wild story. She Shadow Clan Warrior says make Katie read it. I probably will. I think we could get a good video out of it. But There Is No Ethan. It's basically the story of three different women who end up finding each other on the internet, who are all being catfished by the same person. And it's insane to read, especially in the beginning, because the author walks us through, and because it's someone they met online and it's a catfishing situation, we get a lot of their back and forth dialogue or like chats, because there's chat logs of stuff and records of this. And you get to see how these two alleged people kind of like how she fell for this Ethan guy, and you're going through the highs and lows of this like of them connecting, all of this fun banter, and do it just the dread in the pit of your stomach because you read the back and it says there is no Ethan. You know this isn't going to end well, and you were all familiar with what a catfish is at this point, and you just watch this like car crash unfold, and like the point at which, after so many times of canceling plans in really just rude and terrible ways, um uh and eventually the point where the author just like disconnects and is like, no, I don't want to deal with you anymore. And then at that moment, because she had a friend who went to the same school that Ethan apparently went to, and asked him about it. He didn't know anything about Ethan, but another woman from England, yeah, I think she was from England, yeah, another woman from England found messaged the author's friend to also ask about this same guy. So then the friend connects these two women who discover that they have been talking to the same person, same pictures, same names, same story beats, and also he told, we'll call I'm just going to say the author. He had been telling the author about this woman as England, but painting her as his crazy ex. And so as he was talking to all of these different women, and I think in the end there was like 8 throughout, um telling them about each other to make them jealous, to bring them, anytime he would start losing someone, bringing them back in. And it was just like, and then they end up finding a third woman, and it's just so like there's a real like pulse to the book, where as it starts getting closer to finding out what's happening, you're kind of like just so hooked. And again, it really feels like watching a car crash, because you know ultimately that catfishing isn't a crime, and so you know kind of going in that like whatever they discover, there's no real repercussions, especially because it's not like um this person took money from them. Sometimes he would send them stuff, like gifts and things like that. Especially the one from the woman in England. They had been talking for like 5 years or something, an absurd amount of time to be continuously talking to someone, thinking of them as your boyfriend, and to never meet them because but he had a very fantastic way of breaking these women down. Number one, by talking, making them talk to him so much they were exhausted. One of the things the author mentions is that like they would talk until like 2 a.m. and then he'd start messaging again until at like 5 a.m. And like there was weeks went by where she was barely getting 2-3 hours of sleep. And at first, because it's so exciting, that stage where you're talking to someone at that beginning state of dating, where like the banter is bantering and you're like learning about each other, and it's just like you're a sponge soaking it in, and it's so exciting and breathy and delicious. And he gets you that way, and then it continues, and then it starts getting he maintains that through drama and escalated drama, and like he'd get angry and snap, and then he'd apologize. And so there's this a lot of like beating the women down and then coming back and being like, I'm so sorry, but if you hadn't done this thing, and just really manipulating these women. It was crazy. Eventually you find out it's a woman. Ethan was a woman, and not just a woman in medical school to become a gynecologist. And when the 3 women figured all of this out, they emailed the school that fake Ethan was going to in Ireland. So the fake woman, the fake Ethan, is actually from America but spent a lot of time in Britain and was going to med school in Ireland. And they emailed the school saying, hey, are you sure this is the kind of person you want dealing with women in vulnerable positions? Because I don't know about any of you other ladies, but going to the gynecologist is a very, very vulnerable position, especially like if you're dealing with, people who are getting unwanted news, whatever way. Like, it's just, and they were like, I don't know if this is something. And they sent all of the stuff, and the school's like, we'll look into it, and nothing happened. And to this day, the person who is Ethan is literally the head of a gynecological department in the US. Like, it is absolutely crazy. And also, I don't know how she managed to talk to as many women as she did, because at one point they figured out it was like 5 at one time. And like I mentioned, the entire time she's talking to these people, it's all day, all night, into the late night, near constant back and forth with multiple people at the same time. I don't have that much time in my life. I tell my boyfriend sometimes, like, this is it. I don't ever want to have to date again. Because when you're at that stage where you're talking to people at the beginning of dating, you have to, like, message them a lot. It's like it's a little flower and it needs a lot of attention. Like, you can't let the roots get dry, kind of thing. It's a lot. And to do it with that many, like, to sustain that many conversations at the same time, like, I don't like, and I also just the impetus to do it and the fact that this person is just out there living life and there's nothing to do about it. It's crazy. It was a wild book. Uh Even though I just spoiled it, read it. It is very interesting. It is very interesting. Um the other nonfiction book I read is Eugene Piscopo says, just hovering over a patient in a vulnerable position, saying, sorry, I need to reply to this message real quick while being weird on the internet. Exactly. Like, in med school, like, I've been told med school is a terrible time. Like, you're just busy, there's a ton of work. And to also sustain this many fake relationships with people, yike. And then, this is the best point. Nemorales the Scarlet Fool says, why would a person do that unless it's to scam them out of their money? That is the part that I find so sinister about this story. They literally were not getting anything except the emotional satisfaction of manipulating a bunch of women. It is as Atala said, that's a psychotic power move, because that's all it is. It's not like they were sending things financially. And again, this person was doing great. They came from a wealthy background. They had they were in med school in Ireland. Like, it's not like she needed anything. She just couldn't not manipulate women. It's just freaking wild. I oof, go ahead and read it. It's an interesting book. The other book I read that I'm not going to spend too much time on is called Beloved Beasts, which is the one about the history of conservation, which you would think would be a very dry subject, but one of the best things I can say about this book is the author does an incredible job of telling the different focuses in the history of conservation in such a way that each chapter feels like its own beautiful little story, because she focuses on specific people and the thing that they did that contributed to the history of conservation. The first chapter is a bit dry. It's about oh god, I'm forgetting his name, but the guy who created the system by which we scientifically name animals was literally this one guy and his friend from, like, school's pet project, and we've used his basis. So, like, Homo sapien, all of that stuff. And that chapter was a little bit dry, but then we start getting into some of the other, like, there's this one about this woman who kind of took on the Abaddon Society in the US and was really big in the conservation of birds, because there was a period of history where women loved just putting bird feathers in hats. And so a lot of songbirds, it's called Beloved Beasts. Atala asked, wait, what is this animal book called? And it's just fascinating. It is so the people that interacted with the world of conservation and kind of made it was just really, really fascinating, and it gave me hope for humanity, because it talks about like how the bison was saved while also acknowledging that the people who rehabilitated the bison were doing it for all of the wrong reasons. The plains bison were saved not, because they were a part of the American landscape and the bond they had with the Native Americans of the plains. No, it was because they were a symbol of white exceptionalism and like the hunter, like the white man as hunter and his interactions. And also a huge problem, especially in the US and in other places, anytime you had an animal going extinct, they were like, wow, if only those natives who hunt those creatures didn't kill them to the point of extinction. Like, no, no, no. It was not the natives and the native Africans doing that problem. Bad baby white conservative conservationists. Bad. No, no, no. But how like a lot of that stuff happened, the people who decided, we're not just going to save the cute songbirds, but also the birds of prey, because there was this whole period where people were like, birds of prey are a menace. They hunt things that we want to hunt, so we're gonna kill them. And they would literally just go up to mountains and like shoot them out of the sky. And this one woman was like, I don't fucking like that. And she was just like a chill lady who was into bird watching, and she literally took on the Abaddon this society and was like, I'ma buy a mountain and protect the falcons. And just it was just so cool, and it gave you hope. Like, these people dealing with society that have no respect, no understanding of how animals affect the environment, or the environment affects animals. Learning about the woman who wrote something spring, that book about pesticides and its effect on animals and birds. Just like, there's so many, it was just really awesome watching these people have to take on their society, the other scientific minds around them, to try carve a space for animals, and developing the understanding that Silent Spring, thank you, Raggedy Manatee, it talks about that. It talks about what's his name? Aldous Huxley. His grandfather was called oh god, I'm having a real bad time with names today. The guy who wrote Darwin. He was called Darwin's Bulldog because Darwin published his book, and Aldous Huxley's grandfather was like, people are gonna hate you for this, but don't worry, I got your back, buddy. I will literally come at them claws out. And he would literally, anyone who went at Darwin who was a bit of a softie, he just like, he'd go out swinging. And he was a big conservationist and also an atheist. Like, he was the guy that coined the term agnostic, and his family is like a legacy of atheism. It was just really awesome. When I tell you, it gave me such a hope in humanity that I have not had in a really long time. And it ends kind of in our modern day, discussing some of the things that are happening, like, helping conservation in Africa, and also taking conservation in Africa from being this thing that white people are doing by separating the animals from the people who lived around them. Like, if you look at a lot of the national parks, the people that used to live there with the animals are no longer allowed to, and learning that you need to bring the communities on the ground. Like, they have to be invested and they have to be a part of it. And it's just fascinating. And I love it. Please read it. If there's one book you read, Beloved Beast was great. It was super good. But I'm running out of time. So I'm gonna go to the next one. Ella Enchanted. Fairy tale retelling. If anyone has questions about Beloved Spring, I will answer them. But Ella Enchanted. I read Ella Enchanted when I was, I think, in elementary school the first time, and I really loved it. And I think I read it a couple times in middle school and maybe early high school, and then I just didn't touch it. I've also read like The Two Princesses of Bamar and some other stuff, and it was one of my favorite books at the time, so much so that when the movie came out, I was so angry. Anyone who has watched the movie Ella Enchanted and not read the book, let me tell you, you basically know very little about the book. And it's crazy because how many names and characters and things they used in that movie that are just completely different than how it functions in the book. Uh, the book suffered for me coming as an adult, and this was something that I didn't register at all when I was younger, is Ella a little bit has not like other girls to her. But I think part of it, and I think it connects to the concept. And for those of you who don't know, Ella Enchanted is a Cinderella retelling where our main character Ella was given a fairy gift at birth. And instead of something like, she will be pretty, or, she will be happy, or she won't get sick. Instead of something like that, she was given the gift of obedience, which means if she's told to do something, she has to do it. To the point where if she keeps herself from doing it, it like physically hurts her. And so she just has to do it. And her life, because of this, she's developed as a teenager mechanisms to combat that, where she'll do it, but she'll do it in the wrong way. Like she a little bit of Amelia Bedelia, where if you've ever read that book when you were young, if you tell Amelia Bedelia to you know can you put the kettle on the stove, anybody, if you hear that, you should turn on the stove so it'll boil. She'll just put it on the stove. She's very literal, old Amelia Bedelia, so you have to tell her things very exactly. And Ella starts using the nuances in words as a form of rebellion. So if you tell her to come, she'll come very slowly, like just. And because of this, she has a very odd way of interacting with life, which feels a bit like not like other girls, especially. And part of the problem is a lot of the other female characters who are her age, outside of her friend that she makes in boarding school, are kind of just dicks. She has so malicious compliance. Nemorales, the scholarly fool, says yes, 100%. That's Ella's bread and butter. God, why do you keep doing this to me? That's Ella's bread and butter. And the other female characters around her age are just written like, she obviously, because it's Cinderella, she has two evil stepsisters, and they're dumb and mean, and well, the one is just kind of dumb, but the elder one is mean, dumb, and the book thinks that being fat and liking to eat too much is like there's a tiny bit of the fat phobia drizzled in, because the only characters that are kind of described that way, her fairy godmother, who's like her nurse, or her like has lived in her house her whole life, and who wasn't the person who put this curse on her, is described as like chubby, but in like a warm way. But like the evil stepmother and the stepsisters are described as like chubby, but in a grotesque, they love to eat way. Like there's quite a bit of time where you hear about how much they eat, and I don't like that. I could have done without that. But outside of that, and outside of Ella reading a little bit like not like other girls, this book is smart, funny, engaging. The romance is super cute because it's two characters that are, learning to find themselves, struggling to figure out, their lives. Ella, because of obvious reasons, and Prince Charming, who's called Char. His name is Charmant. Uh, you know, trying to be a prince of a realm when he's not, like that isn't naturally his like what he's suited towards. And like they have a couple of really cute scenes together, and their banter is really cute. And the best thing about the book is it's not about a big epic adventure. The crux of the story and the climax of it all happens in Ella, and it's her getting over the curse and finding something that is big enough and important enough to kind of break her curse for, because there's multiple points throughout the story where she's in a situation where her life is on the line and she can't the curse doesn't break. There's a point where she tries to go to a giant's wedding to meet the fairy who put the curse on her, to get them to take it off, and the fairy won't. And because of the curse, there's multiple points where people make her do stuff that is, not great. Like, uh, there's one point where she's told to tell her friend something really terrible the next time she sees her. So she just fucks off. She's like, I can avoid that by just never seeing her again, which just sucks. You have a friend that you really like. Um, and she makes the very wise decision of realizing at the point where Char tells her over letters. There's this whole point, and I think this was one of the things that really hit with me when I was young. Is I don't know about you guys, but I had a lot of not a lot, but I had a few online boyfriends back in middle school and early high school. Guys that you met through the internet and you just talked a lot to and got to know over message boards, Ventrilo, forum role plays. I had an interesting middle school experience. And there's an entire portion of the book where Char and Ella only communicate through letters because he's in a different kingdom. And it was just really cute. And like they're back and forth and some of the stuff they went with. And like he keeps asking her when she'll be the right age to get married. And she keeps giving silly answers because she knows in her heart of hearts that she cannot marry this man. You cannot marry the king, the guy who's going to become king, if you have to do what you're told, because all it takes is one person figuring it out and being like, kill the king, and that guy's fucked. And also she cannot tell people about her curse because her mother or her uh fairy godmother Mandy told her not to as an order, so she can't tell other people about it. So she can't even be like, we shouldn't date or get married because people could use me. I am a liability, a huge one. And so she makes the decision to lie to Char and pretend that she has married a rich old guy so that she has money and status and she doesn't need his princely butt. And it's just a cute story. And I think one of the best parts is the climax is, and I remember, what is there's a YouTuber who does video essays that I really like. What is her? Laura Crone. And she did a video, I think it was her. She did a video about Ella Enchanted, the book versus the movie. And one of the problems, as I mentioned, if you like the book and you see the movie, is the movie has obviously Hollywoodified the crap out of it, but most of Ella's problems are internal. Like, she deals a lot with the fact that she has to do stuff that she doesn't want to. A lot of her fighting and how she does stuff are very small. And when you're making a movie, you have to do something a bit more visual. So the climax of the book is Char realizing that Ella lied to him and she didn't go off and marry someone else, and she's now being treated as a servant in her stepmother's home. And he's like, marry me, Ella. And she wants to say yes, sort of, because she loves him, but she knows she can't. And literally her one stepsister is like, yes, marry him, Ella, because if Ella marries him, then they get a leg up in society. And all these people are telling her to marry this guy, and she knows she can't because it will put his life in danger. And so the climax of the book is her just sitting there thinking about how she cannot marry this motherfucking guy. And the big moment is when she says, no, I will not marry you. And you're like, holy shit, Ella broke the curse. She did it. And if you were to film that scene, it would be a bunch of people sitting around a girl in a chair telling her to marry a guy, and then she says no. So I understand that they had to make some adaptational things, but they went way too campy, and they really it was, I don't like it. It's not good. It's I can understand for some people why that movie is probably like a cozy comfort watch. But oh boy, I get why the climax wouldn't work on a cinematic level, but you guys you jumped the shark a little bit, I think. Yeah, so Science Fantastic said, I've never read Ella Enchanted, but the film has more in common with Shrek than the book. It really does. It's very campy. It's very campy, and it has musical numbers. I guess if you have Anne Hathaway and she can sing, you have her sing. So Um, yeah. And so that one was a really fun one to revisit because, you know, I had some thoughts, but it's just like, if you know a young girl, like a middle schooler or like a fifth grader, just throw this book at them. Just like take it, just chuck it. Just drive by an elementary school and just drop copies into the playground and let them find the women, and not, let me take that back. Let them find the young kids who need them, because anyone could enjoy this book. It's a good time, and especially if you're young and you're in that rebellious stage where as a teenager or as a like preteen, that stage of feeling like you have to do things because people are telling you to do them and you're trying to do your malicious compliance. It hits. It really does. It really does. I don't want to talk about The Witch King because I haven't finished it, but it's interesting and I will have thoughts, so I will talk about it. But yeah, so those were the books I read while I was gone. I had a really good time. I missed the stream. I missed having people to talk to about this stuff. Like, as you can see, I have a lot of thoughts about a lot of what I read, and it just sucked having no one to like digest this through. Because normally, anytime I read something, Saturday morning, I log online and Katie and Will and I digest it together. And it's really beautiful. I think that's the magic of this podcast, is as much as it is a podcast that we record to put on YouTube, it is just me hanging out with two of my best friends talking about books we read. And like sometimes we have to read books that are good for the algorithm and all of that stuff, but it is just, you know, I don't want to say it's forced time to hang out with my friends, but it is a little bit. Like, I know at least, if I don't talk to them because it's been a busy week, I know at least I'll get that Saturday morning plug into StreamYard and get to interact with them. Angry Otter says, Ella Enchanted was my favorite before I read Sabriel. Sabriel is superior in the sense that Sabriel holds up infinitely better as an adult than I would say Ella Enchanted did. It's still great. I still really enjoyed it and would absolutely recommend it. But you definitely can tell that it was written for a younger audience, and I think the magic of Sabriel is Sabriel does not have that at all. Like, it just feels like this story that was told in the way it was supposed to be. It's just fantastic. I really love it. Sloan Ranger said, I've heard that Witch King pales in comparison to Murderbot. We'll have to read it and find out. Witch King is a much more expansive and, I don't want to say risky, but it is much more ambitious. That's the term I want. It is a much more ambitious write, or book to try write. And it's got a lot of odd nuances. Though so far, one of the things I will say I like is I like some of the world building. I like how it's a fantasy world that isn't like Western fantasy or European defaulted fantasy. It plants itself specifically in a different region in the world as far as its inspiration for its fantasy world without feeling too contrived. And it's also one of those books where it has a story happening in the past and the story that's happening in the present. And you're getting like a couple of chapters of the present, a chapter of the past, a couple of chapters of the present, a chapter of the past. And so the stories are happening. And what I will say is oftentimes when I read books like that, there is a huge loss of tension every time you switch back. The one thing so far I will say is thus far, as far as I'm into it, the stuff happening in the past is also super, super interesting, to the point that I almost find that to be the highest tension. And obviously there's tension in the stuff that's happening in the present, but it has less of the, like, this past storyline is really, like, intense and go, go, go. Yeah, so I'll see how I feel about it, and maybe I'll make Katie read it with me. I don't know if I'll make Will do it with me, and then we'll talk about it. Do do do. Maricat says, "Have you seen stuff that would be fun for William to talk or rant about?" As far as what I read, I'd love for William to try some of the Sherlock Holmes stories and do that with him. I think that would be really fun. Black Mage says, Sometimes you have to build in that time and create an incentive to do so. I'm glad I found the podcast. Yeah, as far as like interacting with friends, I completely get that. Al says Witch King has aspirations. It doesn't quite hit. That's my big worry with it so far, is that it feels very ambitious, but it's not quite getting there. Rum Skittle says, I look forward to more Maria in the podcast, especially when you'll read the Savior's Army. I'm not looking forward to that. Angry Otter says, I'm telling you guys to read the Roxura series. Martha Wells has already written non-standard fantasy. Okay, I will absolutely look at that, because I like her writing. Rachel the Radiant says, I always think of Tolkien when I hear Witch King. Fair. Yeah. That's I think that's it. Unless there's any other questions or anything that anyone has. I think this was a lot of fun. I enjoyed talking with you guys. Thank you for all of those who joined. I don't know if something like this will happen again. I had a lot of books to talk about. And we needed a live stream this week. But I enjoyed it. Y'all are a good time, as usual. So, thanks for being here and listening to me rant about BBC Sherlock and Doctor Who. Good times. Thanks, guys. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for being here. I didn't think of an outro. Oh god, that's cold. That's cold tea. I waited too. Oh, but is it delicious tea? God damn. My boyfriend has a lot of cool teas, and this one's a coconut tea and very delicious. Have a great weekend, guys. If this is your evening, good night. Go to bed. If it's late, get some sleep. If it's your morning or midday, enjoy the rest of your weekend, my fellow humans, and I will talk to you next time. Be safe out there, kids. Bye!